There's a special moment in every person's life. It's like when you're playing and suddenly realize no one is watching. It's not a loud or dramatic moment. It's quiet, like when you're alone in your room and realize something important. In that moment, you stop expecting other people to understand what you're feeling inside. It's like discovering that you don't need someone to read your mind to be happy. And do you know what happens then? Something very ancient inside you awakens. A strength that doesn't ask for favors, doesn't explain everything 1,000 times, and doesn't need applause. That's when you stop pretending to be someone you're not and start being the real you. Because the world may not care much, but you don't have to be weak because of it. The ancient sages knew this long ago. They discovered that true power begins when you stop expecting so much from others. And when that dies inside you, your real life finally begins. If you want to stop chasing others' approval and start building your inner strength, think of it as a silent promise you make to yourself. A step toward a life based on discipline, clarity, and self-respect. Because here, we don't chase the world's applause. We build things the world can't ignore. Most people carry a secret dream. They believe that if they suffer enough, someone will show up to help. Like a movie where the hero always arrives at the right time. It's a gentle hope, one we don't usually speak out loud, but one we learn from a young age. If I'm in pain, the world will care. But then real life happens. The pain is ignored like a toy thrown in the corner. Tears go unnoticed. The phone goes silent. And that's when something shifts inside you. You start to see the illusion for what it really is. It's not about you being worthless. It's about how people are too busy with their own problems. Everyone is struggling with something you'll never fully see, just as they'll never fully see what you're facing. And if you build your identity on being seen by others, you'll spend your whole life feeling invisible. That little pain of being ignored isn't cruel. It's reality. And if you pay attention, maybe it's trying to teach you something important. When we're young, we believe that pain deserves recognition. We think that if we suffer, someone owes us comfort. But the truth is, life doesn't award medals for enduring difficult things. It doesn't send angels when you're on your knees. It just keeps going. People move on with their lives. Friends forget. Strangers scroll through their phones. Not out of malice, but because they're drowning in their own problems. This may sound harsh, but being harsh doesn't mean it's not true. And here's the strange twist. This discovery, painful as it may be, is the first step to becoming free. Because when you stop waiting for the world to respond to your pain, you stop waiting. You stop freezing your life in the hope that someone will notice you're trapped. You start moving for reasons that have nothing to do with applause. Carl Jung once said, "The world will ask you who you are, and if you don't know, the world will tell you." But what he didn't say is that most people don't ask because they care. They ask so they can put you in a box that makes sense to them. They don't see the real you. They see their idea of you. And when you stop presenting yourself to that gaze, you finally begin to live for something real. There's a kind of sadness that comes when you realize you're not the main character in anyone's story but your own. It's not rejection. It's simply how things work. No one owes you understanding. No one is obligated to hold your hand in the fog. And while this may make the world seem colder, it also makes your inner world burn brighter. Because now you're the one lighting the fire. No more waiting for someone to read between the lines of your silence. No more waiting for your silent crisis to be noticed and gently fixed by someone who simply understands. You understand now. And that changes everything. That disappointment that used to hurt becomes something else. It becomes clarity. And clarity is the first true freedom. This is where the ancient sages found their strength, not by being untouched by pain, but by refusing to outsource their healing. Marcus Aurelius reminded himself every day, don't waste what's left of your life speculating about your neighbors. In other words, stop waiting for someone to see your wounds and declare your worth. The more you focus on being seen, the less you see yourself. And ironically, the more invisible you become. You become noise in someone else's life instead of a signal in your own. But when you finally let go of the hope that others will witness your suffering and give it weight, that's when you begin to build something indestructible. Not because you've gotten tougher, but because you've gotten clearer. You begin to notice how much of your identity has been shaped around being seen, around the belief that someone, somewhere, should care. And when they didn't, you took it personally. But here's the truth no one likes to admit. Just because people don't care doesn't mean you're worthless. It just means they're human, flawed, overwhelmed, distracted, just like you. The game was never about being seen. It was about waking up to the fact that you were always watching. You were the one living inside your head the whole time. You were the only witness to the full weight of your thoughts. This isn't a curse. It's a gift, because it means you're the one with the power to change your narrative. Not them. You. There's power in being ignored. There's clarity in walking without needing an audience. Epictetus said, don't explain your philosophy. Embody it. And that's what happens when you stop waiting to be seen. You begin to become. Not for attention, not for recognition, but because something inside you refuses to remain small. The pain that once seemed unbearable becomes your project. The silence that once haunted you becomes your teacher. The loneliness that once frightened you becomes your home. And when this shift happens, you no longer need to convey your wounds. You simply carry them differently, not as a burden, but as proof that you kept moving forward. So maybe being ignored wasn't the tragedy you thought it was. Maybe it was the beginning, the slow, silent death of illusion and the birth of something real, something solid, something that no longer seeks validation because it's too busy building something permanent. You don't need to be seen to become something great. You need to see yourself clearly, honestly, without embellishment. That's when everything changes. That's where your real life begins. When no one listens, something unexpected happens. You start to listen to yourself. Not the voice on the surface, the one that echoes what others expect of you, but the quieter one underneath, the one you ignored because it wasn't loud enough to compete with the world's noise. But in the absence of applause, silence takes root. You start to hear your own thoughts more clearly. Not as background noise, but as guidance. It's strange at first, even uncomfortable. You're used to checking your reflection in others' eyes. But when those eyes shift, you learn to see yourself from the inside out. And that's when something changes. You start to move differently. Not because someone told you to, not because someone believed in you, but because you decided to show up without witnesses, without cheering, without someone holding the door open. Self-confidence doesn't come in a burst of confidence. It comes slowly, often disguised as loneliness. You wake up one day and realize no one is asking how you are, no one is checking in. And instead of crumbling, you start building. You start taking yourself seriously, not because others do, but because you're tired of waiting. How many times have you paused your growth, waiting for someone to give you permission to continue, waiting for someone to tell you it's the right time, the right move, the right direction? But what if that permission never comes? What if no one ever tells you you're ready? Would you be frozen forever? Or would you finally reclaim the authority that's always been yours? That's where real power begins. Not in being chosen, but in choosing yourself. The world teaches us to seek validation as if it were oxygen. But the wise knew that peace isn't found in popularity. It's found in discipline. Epictetus said, "No person is free who is not their own master." Freedom doesn't come from being supported. It comes from knowing that even when you're not supported, you'll keep going. That even when the room is empty, you'll still do the work. And not out of bitterness, but because the work matters, because you matter. When you understand this, showing up stops being a performance. It becomes an act of self-respect. And in that stillness, a new relationship forms, not with the world, but with your own mind. You begin to trust it more. Ask what it needs. Listen to the tiredness in your body, the tug in your gut, the fire in your chest. Stop outsourcing your intuition. Stop living reactively. Carl Jung once said, "He who looks outside dreams. He who looks inside awakens." This awakening doesn't feel like a dramatic discovery. It feels like subtle, consistent decisions that build a foundation beneath your feet. You start keeping your promises to yourself. You go for the walk. You write the words. You say no when something drains you. These aren't loud acts, but they build something no one can see from the outside: confidence. And self-confidence is the currency of freedom. There's a quiet kind of strength that develops when you realize you're your own backup plan. When silence no longer scares you. When you don't need to announce every move or explain every feeling. When you don't beg for someone to notice you're trying, because you know the effort you're making. You know the storms you've weathered. You know what it took to still be here, choosing growth over collapse. This isn't arrogance. It's integrity. You're no longer presenting yourself to the world. You're becoming yourself. There will still be moments of doubt. Moments when you wish someone would say, "I see you." But now you're no longer dependent on it. You no longer crumble in its absence. You carry yourself with the quiet awareness that you've earned your own respect. And that's rare. That's what makes people pause when you walk into a room. Not because you demanded attention, but because your energy says, "I don't need it." Seneca once wrote, "The greatest empire is to govern oneself." And governing oneself doesn't feel like perfection. It feels like consistency in the face of invisibility. It feels like doing what matters even when no one applauds. It feels like maintaining high standards even when no one is watching. When you build from this place, you no longer depend on external structure. You become the structure. It doesn't crumble when someone walks away. It doesn't crumble when someone misunderstands you, because your foundation was never built on their understanding in the first place. It was built on clarity, on silent decisions made in solitude, on the strength to wake up and move forward again and again because that's who you chose to become. And that's the most important part. Once you begin to depend on yourself in this way, you stop resenting others for not being who you needed. You set them free. You stop waiting for them to return, for them to notice, for them to explain. You no longer tie your progress to their presence. You move independently, not coldly, but with grace. You are free, not because the pain is gone, but because it no longer defines the path. You carry it, but it doesn't carry you. This is what true self-confidence looks like. Not an absence of need, but a deep inner firmness that says, even if no one sees me, even if no one comes, even if no one helps, I will continue because this life is mine to live. And I will not wait for anyone to give me permission to become who I was always meant to be.